So tonight is Game 7 of the conference semifinals, the final game of the conference semifinals. Game 7 between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Detroit Pistons. The other three spots, the other three conference finals participants have been are locked in. The Spurs and the Thunder, the 2 seed and the 1 seed respectively, are going to go at it in the Western Conference, and the New York Knicks are going to await the winner of this series, of the conclusion of the Cavs and the Pistons in Game 7 tonight. So they're all pretty much set, and then the conference finals will begin tomorrow. This segment here is really going to zero in on one player in particular, and that's James Harden. James Harden of the Cleveland Cavaliers, and what it means if he does or does not show up in Game 7. Now, before I go in, let me just say this about James Harden, okay? James Harden, a couple years ago, was voted on the NBA's 75th anniversary team, and rightfully so. James Harden is one of the best scorers in NBA history, especially in the isolation game. He's averaged over 30 multiple times in his career. He's a league MVP, a former league MVP. He's a sixth man. He's accomplished pretty much anything you can accomplish in an NBA career outside of winning a championship. He was part of one of the early big threes in Oklahoma City, drafted to there in 2009. Teaming up with Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant to form a very lethal, lethal not combo, but a lethal trio. That's the word I was looking for. A lethal trio in OKC. Going over to Houston and really being the face, not just of the Rockets, but one of the faces in the NBA for the length of time that he was there in Houston, about 7 or 8 years or so. James Harden was one of the best players, a top 5, top 4 player in the NBA. And that was, of course, where he won his MVP. And then, he's even as he got older or got deeper into his career, he was still a very good player. He was still a very good player. He was still a threat for 30, 35 points, 40 points on a given night in Brooklyn, here in Philly, in LA, and he's showing that even at age 36, 37 years old here in Cleveland, as his career looks to be winding down, he still is, one of the best scorers, a guy who can drive, who can penetrate. He still has his playmaking chops. Let me see what his numbers are here. I don't have it in front of me. Let me just see if I can look it up here real quickly. Because listen, for everything, for all the negativity around him, he still is a beast. And he still must be respected as one of the game's all-time players. Let me see. James Harden this year, he averaged, I'm looking at it, he averaged over 33 times in a year. He averaged over 30 at least 3 times in his NBA career. Okay, so this year, in between stints in Los Angeles and Cleveland, he averaged 25 in Los Angeles, 25, 5, and 8, and then in Cleveland, 25 and 5. So he still is a walking bucket. Let's just put it that way. James Harden can still give you work on the offensive end, and he still is somebody that must be respected. And again, one of the best isolation scorers the game has ever seen. Very much deserving of his spot in the top 75 players of all time, as far as I'm concerned. And 25 or now 20 years from now or so, he'll probably be voted onto the NBA's 100th anniversary team, and rightfully so. He is one of the best offensive players, especially offensive guards, in NBA history. So that much cannot be disputed. That being said, James Harden's playoff history, which is what I'm going to discuss a little bit now, his playoff history is, how can I put this? His playoff history is checkered. I think that's the best way to describe it. His playoff history is checkered. I'm not going to include his playoff runs in Oklahoma City because he was not the focal point. I mean, he was part of the team. He was a big part of why they had the success that they did, but he was not the focal point of those late 2000s, early 2010s Oklahoma City Thunder runs. When he went to Houston, he was. And going from the time he got to Houston, being the centerpiece of the offense, James Harden has been in the playoffs many times over. In fact, he might have been in the playoffs. He might have taken his teams to the playoffs every year since he left Oklahoma City. And he had some good moments, but he ultimately did not deliver. When those teams needed him to. He didn't deliver. And particularly in Game 7s of playoff series, James Harden has a penchant. In fact, I would say he almost has a bad reputation for either playing poorly or just not showing up at all. And listen, I'm not saying anything that isn't true. I'm not saying anything that I'm not just pulling stuff out of the air. James Harden typically does not play well in meaningful Game 7s. Now, I just pulled up a graphic here of James Harden in Game 7. The numbers are mixed. Like I said, his Game 7 playoff history is checkered at best. Now, I'm looking at like I said, I'm not going to include what happened in OKC, but I'm just going to go here. I'm just going to go down here from his time in Houston. Every Game 7 that he's played in from the time that he left OKC. So here, and this is courtesy of StatMuse, so I'm not just pulling numbers out of the air here. May 17th, 2015, James Harden had 31, 7, and 8 in the Western Conference semifinals against the Clippers. That was where they came back from 3-1, and he played well in that game, 31, 7, and 8. In 2018, Game 7 against the Warriors, which was a loss, they lost, or he had 32, 6, and 6. Solid, great, good. In fact, good numbers. I won't say solid. Those are very good numbers, but it was in a loss. They lost to the KD, Steph, Golden State Warriors. 9/20/2020. Against Oklahoma City. That was during the bubble, the bubble year, the COVID bubble year. 17-3-9. Those aren't good numbers, but I believe they won that game. They were able to advance to the next round, even though James Harden, numbers wise, did not play well. 6/19/2021, his first year in Brooklyn, 22-9-9. Now the Nets lost that game. They lost to the Bucks in Game 7, in large part because Kevin Durant's foot was on the 3-point line, and they would lose in overtime, I believe. And that was actually a year that the Nets really could have won it all, because they had James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving all on that team, and that was the year that a lot of people, rightfully so, expected them to be able to break down the barrier and get to the NBA Finals. Now, here is where his Game 7 playoff history really takes a nosedive. And I saw this as a Sixer fan. I saw this up close and personal. May 14th, 2023, in Game 7 against the Boston Celtics. Now, remember, this is where the Sixers had they had the Celtics on the ropes. I watched every game of that series. We had the Celtics on the ropes. We were up 3-2. All we needed to do was win 2 more games, and we would have been in the conference finals. James Harden plays 41 minutes, 9 points, 6 boards, 7 assists. For a guy that we had high expectations of, that we traded to bring to Philadelphia to help get us over the hump, to help Joel Embiid get over the hump, those kind of numbers aren't cool. And that was really the beginning of the end of James Harden's tenure in Philadelphia. That was a really sour ending to what we all thought was going to be a very special season. Joel Embiid coming off of the MVP season. We finally looked poised to take down the Celtics and get to the conference finals for the first time in 22 years. So that was really a watershed moment for the Sixers organization and really for James Harden too. 2 years later, James Harden, again at Game 7 against the Nuggets, 7 points, 5 boards, 13 assists in 35 minutes. That ain't it, man. That ain't it. And then the most recent Game 7 that he played in, just last round, 18-6-3. Those aren't bad numbers, but what I'm getting at here, and these are all his career in Game 7s are 19, 7, and 6 in eight career Game 7s. So those aren't terrible numbers, but they aren't great numbers either. Especially those ugly single digit games. That ugly single digit game in Philadelphia here against the Celtics. So what I'm saying is that James Harden, he has a reputation for not showing up for his basketball team when it counts the most. In fact, now that I'm looking at it, I didn't even think about how many of these were free throws, because James Harden is very good at getting to the free throw line. But again, James Harden, he's developed a reputation. It's been talked about. It's well known amongst sports circles that James Harden is not a clutch playoff performer. I mean, that's just what it is. If your team is in a chance to make a run and they have James Harden on your team, or you have James Harden on your team, it's not a happy thought. It's not a happy feeling because of his penchant to disappear in game sevens, or not even game sevens, or just in closeout games. When you need him to be at his best, more often than not, he is going to be at his worst. He is not going to come through and deliver for you the way you expect him to. Now, that's a problem because now, here, this year, James Harden is on the Cleveland Cavaliers. And yet again, James Harden finds himself in a Game 7 in an elimination game against, a team that I would say the Cavs are probably equal to, maybe even better than. Now listen, the Cleveland Cavaliers, they are Donovan Mitchell's team. That team belongs to Donovan Mitchell. He is the centerpiece. He's been the centerpiece of that team for a couple of years now, ever since he left Utah. Donovan Mitchell, he still has, a good chunk of his career in front of him. And he's the superstar. He's the Batman of Cleveland right now. But James Harden was brought in to help get this Cavaliers team over the hump. And even at age 36, James Harden has shown that he can still, going back to what I said at the outset, he can still take over a game if he has to. And that's why he was brought on board in Cleveland, to help push the Cavaliers over the hump, to help get them to that next level. So it is a really big deal for James Harden to play well, and not just play well, but to make sure that the Cavaliers win the game tonight against the Pistons. Because here's the reality of it. The Pistons, yes, they are the number 1 seed. Yes, they are the favorite, I'll say. They have the home court advantage. They have a rising superstar in Cade Cunningham. They have a nice core of supporting role players around Cade Cunningham to help, that has helped them get this far. So everything points to the Pistons being, the favorite, all this other stuff. But in my opinion, when I look at these two teams, I think that the Cavaliers are probably as good, if not better, because they have more superstars, or more stars / superstars than the Pistons do. The Pistons have always been a team that has relied on maybe 1 or 2 stars, not superstars, but 1 or 2 stars. Even going back to the Bad Boys days, where they had Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars running the show, and a good supporting cast of players. Back in those days, the Pistons had Dennis Rodman early in his career, Mark Aguirre, Vinnie Johnson, Bill Laimbeer, Rick Mahorn. They had a nice stable of tough guys who could really, be the enforcers, who could really insulate Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars and allow them to do what they had to do to impact the flow of the game. You fast forward several years later, the Pistons, they didn't really have even any stars. Chauncey Billups was a good player, but I wouldn't call him a star. But they had Chauncey Billups, they had, Rip Hamilton, who were really their offensive centerpieces, and then you had guys around them who who could do all the dirty work. Guys like Tayshaun Prince, Rasheed Wallace, Ben Wallace. I believe they had Antonio McDyess there for a little while. Mehmet Okur, I think that his name. I don't know why his name just came to me, but the Pistons have always been that kind of a team. We're not going to hold one superstar, but we're going to make sure that we surround him with blue collar guys, and it's the same thing with this squad here. Cade Cunningham, he is a superstar, borderline MVP candidate, and you have guys around him that all have specific defined roles, and they all play their roles well. Duncan Robinson, Jalen Duran, Isaiah Thomas, or not Isaiah Stewart. Who else? I can't even think of some of the other guys that they have on their team. Asar Thompson. Even Tobias Harris. Okay, even none of those guys are superstars, but they all have defined roles, and they play their roles well. So they're even though, yes, they are the top dog numbers wise in the East, I think that the Cavaliers should be on paper a little bit better than they are, because the Cavaliers, they have an all-star in Evan Mobley. They have a guy in Donovan Mitchell who is steadily building a Hall of Fame career. He's on a Hall of Fame trajectory. He probably will be in the Hall of Fame, but he still has, like I said, a good chunk of his career to develop. He's probably going to be playing at an all-star level for another 5 or 6 years before he starts to, slope downward in terms of his skill. James Harden is a Hall of Fame player. James Harden will be in the Hall of Fame one day. But his penchant for disappearing when you need him the most, it's the elephant in the room. James Harden in Game 7 or elimination games in the same sentence usually does not end well. And I mean, that's just what it is. So they have to, when I say they, I really mean James Harden. He has to carry his load. He has to carry his slack to make sure that the Cavs don't lose this game. Because if they lose this game, and even worse, if they lose this game and James Harden does not play well, if he has another one of these triple single stinkers, if he has a game like he did in 23 where we're 9, 6, and 7, 27% from the field. I mean, listen, his Hall of Fame credentials are solidified. He's going to be in the Basketball Hall of Fame, but there's going to be a comma right after that. James Harden is a Hall of Famer, comma, but his playoff no-shows are well documented. And that's ultimately, I think, what his legacy is going to be. A great scorer, a great offensive player, one of the best offensive players to ever play. But dude did not show up in the playoffs. Dude, he never was able to help take a team to an NBA Finals. outside of Oklahoma City, because he was playing with two Hall of Famers in Oklahoma City. And, even though, yes, Donovan Mitchell is the star, James Harden was brought along to be that final piece to Cleveland's championship puzzle. And if he doesn't play well, people are going to be talking about him. The narrative about him being a playoff, what's the name of that magician? I'm drawing a blank. Hopefully you know who I'm talking about, but the narrative of him being a playoff vanishing act, it's going to stay with him like a bad stench. It just is. And that is what his legacy is going to be. So for him, the Cleveland Cavaliers need to win this game against Detroit. And he needs to play well. If the Cavs win and James Harden doesn't play well, then we'll kind of sweep his performance under the rug. But if they lose the game and he stinks up the joint, man, it's not going to get pretty. I mean, he already has a reputation not just for disappearing in important playoff games, but for bouncing around the league. Behind closed doors, we don't know what goes on, but going from one place to another because of clashing with management. So he already has a reputation for not getting along with whatever city he's in. He's got to show up. That's really all there is to it. He's got to show up, and he's got to do his part. And he's got to aid Donovan Mitchell in getting this victory. They can do it. They can absolutely do it. But he's got to hold up his end of the bargain. So that's what it is. I think that James Harden's legacy is set, but he has a chance to really put a lot of things to rest, put a lot of additional footnotes on his legacy to rest if he plays well in this game and if he's able to help propel the Cavaliers to a championship run. Now, it's not going to be easy because they're going to have to do it in hostile territory. They had a chance to close out Detroit in Game 6 the other night, but they didn't do it. So now they have to do it in Detroit against those fans in that atmosphere. And they just made the situation. It's like 2023 all over again. They had a chance to close out the Celtics when he was on the Sixers. They had a chance to close out the Celtics in Game 6, but they didn't do it, and they allowed the Celtics to force a Game 7 and push the series back to their home court. They allowed Detroit to push the series back to their home court in Detroit. And so now they've just made the mission that much harder for themselves. So I think that James Harden's legacy is he has a chance to really regain control of it with a great performance and a win tonight. So we'll see what happens. I'm looking forward to seeing the game. The game tip off is in a little over an hour at 8:00. So we'll see what happens. For his sake, I hope that he can do it. I hope that at the very least he plays well and helps to make it a competitive game. I know Donovan Mitchell is going to play well. I know that the rest of the squad is going to play well. I know that they're going to get good performances from Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. But James Harden is really the big X factor in this game. The way that he plays how well he plays or doesn't play is ultimately going to be the reason why Cleveland loses or wins Game 7. So we'll see what happens. It should be a great game. We always love Game 7s. And we'll see who moves on to meet the Knicks in the Eastern Conference semis.